Teacher Talking Sports, what it does, what do, how we live. And let's continue the NFL Mount Rushmore series I began a couple days ago, where I name who I believe are the four best players in each decade in NFL history. Started with the 2010s, going backwards. Today is the 1990s. Man, was this one difficult. Like, super duper, absolutely ridiculously difficult. But anyhow, let's take a look at the four guys I chose. Go more into them as the video goes on. But anyhow, in alphabetical order by last name, I included Jerry Rice, Barry Sanders, Bruce Smith, and Emmitt Smith. I know what you're thinking, Teach, really? No quarterback? And man, Brett Favre and Steve Young, I wanted to put both of them on. I just didn't know who to take off. And it's not like I have a thing against quarterbacks, because my 2010s had three and my 2000s had two. So yeah, not even just those two. John Elway as well. What about Deion Sanders, one of the best cornerbacks of all time? Some other honorable mentions: Rod Woodson, Derek Thomas, Bruce Matthews, Randall McDaniel, and Reggie White, just to name a few. I mean, Aikman, Irvin, there's more as well. But again, it's just super difficult. I've found these NFL Mount Rushmores by decade to be more difficult than MLB. But anyhow, let's get into the four I chose, starting with, again, alphabetical by last name, Jerry Rice. Now, Rice's career actually began in 85, was ridiculous his first 5 years, but it continued into the 90s, played the whole decade with the 49ers, finished the decade with 860 catches for 12,078 yards, 103 receiving touchdowns. He also ran for 6 touchdowns as well, 109 total touchdowns. So in the decade, he was named the Offensive Player of the Year in 1993. Also, the Offensive Player of the Year finishes of third twice and fifth. Was runner-up for MVP in 1995. Also had MVP finishes of third, and seventh in the decade. He was a 6-time first-team All-Pro, named to 8 Pro Bowls. Led the league in receptions twice. Those were 2 of 4 seasons where he had triple digits in receptions. Each of his first 7 seasons of the decade went over 1,200 yards, then also had 1,157 in 1998, but led the league in receiving yards 4 times, including 1,848 in 1995. Each of his first 6 seasons had double-digit receiving touchdowns, 3 times leading the league. Twice had 15. That was his high for the decade. But yeah, just some ridiculous numbers from Jerry Rice. Many see him as the GOAT wide receiver. Won a Super Bowl with the 49ers in the 1994 season, and that during that playoff run, he caught 4 touchdowns in that Super Bowl run, but altogether played in a lot of playoff games. Hold on. He played in, 14 playoff games. I don't know why Football Reference isn't working well, but anyhow, 14 playoff games, and yes, won a Super Bowl. Jerry Rice seen as the best wide receiver of all time, first member of my NFL Mount Rushmore for the 1990s. Next, many see him as the most electric running back in NFL history. That would be Barry Sanders. Career started in 89, so not counting that year, but played 9 seasons after that. Of course, abruptly, I should say, retiring after 1998. But in those 9 seasons in the 90s, Sanders rushed for 13,799 yards, 85 touchdowns, 5 yards a pop from the ground. Also adding 328 catches, 2,639 yards, and 10 scores. So 16,438 yards from scrimmage and 95 total touchdowns. Sanders was named the league's MVP in 1997. Also at MVP finishes second and third. He won Offensive Player of the Year in both 1994 and 1997. Also had Offensive Player of the Year finishes of third twice and fifth. 5 times was named a first-team All-Pro, and the other 4 seasons was a second-team All-Pro. Made the Pro Bowl all 9 seasons. Ran for at least 1,115 yards all 9 seasons, and that the year he did that. Ran for that amount. He played in just 11 games, but led the league in rushing 4 times, including 1997 when he rushed for 2,053 yards. Led the league in rushing, I think I said that 4 times. Led the league with 16 rushing touchdowns in 1991. One of 5 seasons he had double-digit rushing touchdowns. Led the league in yards per carry. 1994, 5.7. 1997, he actually averaged 6.1. For the decade, he had 4 seasons averaging more than 5 yards per carry. Had 4 seasons where he averaged more than 100 rushing yards per game. Again, did damage in the passing game, averaging well over 2 catches per game. During the decade, of course, we know the Lions didn't have much success, but Barry Sanders just, again, arguably the most electric back in NFL history, the second member of my NFL Mount Rushmore. Next, they weren't saying boo, they were saying Bruce. I'm going with the first overall pick in the 1985 NFL Draft, Bruce Smith. So yes, his first 5 seasons came in the 80s, but in the 1990s, played the whole decade with the Bills. Following that, did go to then known as the Redskins, but from 1990 to 1999, Smith totaled 113.5 sacks, 26 forced fumbles, 8 fumble recoveries, and 2 interceptions. Smith was named Defensive Player of the Year twice, both in 1990 and 1996. He also had Defensive Player of the Year finishes the 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 7th in the decade. Bruce Smith was named a 6-time first-team All-Pro, was named to 8 Pro Bowls in the decade. In 8 of his 10 seasons, he had double-digit sacks, and one season he played just 5 games, but had 19 sacks the first year, 1990, and had 3 more with 14. Even had 2 seasons with over 100 tackles, which is pretty impressive for a defensive end. Twice led the league with 5 forced fumbles. He had 6 seasons of at least 3 forced fumbles. Of course, the Bills made 4 straight Super Bowls spanning from the 1990 to 1993 seasons. No, he didn't win. Him and the Bills did not win any, but he was still productive in those games, especially the final 2 Super Bowl runs in the 1992 season and 1993 season playoffs. He had 6.5 sacks in 7 playoff games. Bruce Smith, the 3rd member of the 1990s Mount Rushmore. Let's end with the all-time leading rusher, that is Emmitt Smith. So Emmitt Smith was rookie year was in 1990. Spent his first 10 seasons with Dallas. During that time, Emmitt Smith rushed for 13,963 yards and 136 touchdowns. Also added 442 receptions for 2,728 yards, 11 touchdowns. So altogether 16,691 yards from scrimmage, 147 combined rushing and receiving touchdowns. Smith was named the 1993 MVP. Also had MVP finishes of 3rd twice. Finished as the Offensive Player of the Year runner-up in 1995. Also had 2 third-place finishes. Was the Offensive Rookie of the Year in 1990. Smith was named 4 straight years from 92 to 95. Was a first-team All-Pro. Named to 8 Pro Bowls in the decade. 4 times Smith led the league in rushing. Each of the last 9 seasons in the decade had over 1,000 yards, and his rookie year he had 937. He had a then record 25 rushing touchdowns in 1995, was since passed by, I believe, Shaun Alexander and then LaDainian Tomlinson, but had 21 in 1994, but had 8 seasons with double-digit rushing touchdown numbers. Led the league averaging 5.3 yards per carry. In 1993, averaged over 100 rushing yards per game 3 times in the decade. Emmitt Smith also won 3 Super Bowls in the 90s, in the 1992, 93, and 95 seasons. The middle of those 2, he was named the Super Bowl MVP. Quite productive. So all of his postseason games, all 17, came in the 90s. In that time, In the playoffs, he rushed for 1,586 yards and 19 touchdowns, more than one rushing touchdown per game, 93.3 rushing yards per game. Pretty incredible numbers in the postseason. Emmitt Smith, the final member of my 1990s Mount Rushmore. I mean, let me know in the comments, do you agree, disagree? I mean, Brett Favre won 3 MVPs and I didn't include him. Again, I don't have anything against quarterbacks. 5 of my first 8 from my first 2 Mount Rushmore by Decade videos were quarterbacks. So, anyhow, stay tuned for the 1980s. I'm certain there'll be at least one quarterback on there. And again, let me know who you would have included in this one. And check out my old ones. Previous ones as well. I have all my Mount Rushmore videos. I've done previous iterations of Mount Rushmore videos as well. They're all in playlists. Anyhow, don't forget to subscribe. Tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend, subscribe. Like the video, share the video, hit the bell for notifications. I'm out.